So now that our crown stem has had time to dry and set, we can go ahead and put it back into the case and begin putting the case back on and finishing up with our watch. But before we do that, we want to seal our watch with silicone grease, and you're going to have some of this in your Esslinger toolkit. This is going to be imperative to help the water tightness of your watch. It also keeps your O-ring on your case back from drying out, in addition to prevent water from getting in. So if you're opening any watch and putting it back together, I really recommend getting some of this stuff and applying it to the O-ring of your watch. So I'm gonna get some of this out. Looks like there's a little stopper here on the top. Keep it from drying out. There we go. And that just made a mess. I'm gonna wipe it up. So get your Q-tips out. And the first thing we're going to do is get a little bit on the end of the Q-tip, just a tiny bit. And there is actually a rubber seal inside your crown. I like to just kind of apply a little bit inside there before I put my crown back on, just to add a little bit of extra sealing to the crown when it's all the way down. Applied a liberal amount inside there. And then when your crown is screwed all the way down, or push that grease back in around your crown tube, will really help water from getting in. And that's really the two areas that water is going to get in, is going to be around the crown and around the case back. And I've applied enough in there, I think. This watch, when you unscrew the crown all the way, it is not waterproof at all. So don't take the watch bathing with the crown unscrewed. I'm going to set that aside. Wipe off the excess a little bit here that I got on the inside of my crown. If you want to be extra thorough, I just dab a very tiny bit of it and I mean a very tiny bit of it around the crown tube. Also helps seal it up some more, and also helps it thread a little easier. So I'm just putting a little bit on it. Okay, good. Go ahead and get crown in. I'm in the winding position. We're not threading. That is fantastic. Remember how I thought I might have cut it too short, but I did not. So I'm going to go ahead and screw it all the way down. See how it looks. Make sure time setting's working. Appears to be just fine. Hard to grip when I got all that silicone grease on my hand. Whoa. It's looking pretty good. Made a bit of mess here when I flipped it. Okay. So our crown is in. It's sealed. Next thing to do is to seal the case back. And for that, I just take a little bit of silicone grease, put it on my end of my Q-tip, and just rub it around the case back, around the O-ring on your case back. Don't worry, you can wipe off excess in the end once you screw it back on. This is going to really help ensure that your watch stays dry. And by the way, this case has been tested to 10 atmospheres, 100 meters water resistant. You know, it's not exactly a, I wouldn't exactly call this watch a dive watch or anything. And really, I kind of consider dive watch to start in the 200 meters territory. but you know, 100 meters is serviceable. I mean, you could go in a pool in the watch. I wouldn't do like heavy water sports like skiing or anything with it, but certainly a dip in the pool would be fine with this watch, especially once you have it greased. That looks pretty good. When you screw down the case, the excess will squish out, and you just kind of wipe it off the case, and you're set. So I'm going to throw that out. Change my gloves. Got a ton of grease on them. Kind of wipe the excess around the sides off of the case. Got a little bit on the inside there. All right. So just like before, when you're cleaning out the inside of the sapphire, you want to do the same thing for your case back. Since we have a display case back, you don't want any dust in that. Grab it. My trusty blower on it. Got a fair amount of grease on the outside of it. You're just going to check for dust. Fortunately, the case pack, being that it's smaller and being that it's going over the movement and not a dial with hands, it's a little bit easier to clean out. Smaller surface area. It's looking pretty good. I'd have set that back aside in your Petri dish, because the final step is putting your rotor back on before we can put the case back on. I have an engraved rotor here, which I love these. They're awesome looking. This is one of our earlier cuts, not a production version, but it's close enough. Looks fairly good. It's not 100% perfect, but it'll work. You should have set aside your rotor screw from before when we took it off initially, way back when. Don't forget the method we used before, which involves sticky notes, cutting a small sliver, I tell you, in regards to these rotors, this artist that we found, he's just a gem to have here in Cincinnati. You know, his lathe is from the early 1900s. He's hand cranking that thing. You know, it's not electrically operated or anything like that. Takes him about an hour per rotor. And for a watch like this to have something hand engraved on it is really pretty unique. I'd find it hard to believe you're going to find another watch really under $5,000 that has a hand engraved rotor as an option. Hand cut. It's really kind of cool. I'm going to get this thing on and started. Grab your screwdriver for this operation. This would be a time if you noticed any fingerprints on your movement to get out your Rodico putty and clean it off. I might just go ahead and set this down by hand. Till it lines up, it's lined up. What I'm doing now is just getting it threaded on. I'm not tightening it all the way at this point. Just wanted to get it on so I could get the get my little protector in place here. It's really easy when you're rotate it around so we're covering the balance. Take another piece, protect the movement. And there we go. Now you can tighten down that screw with a very high level of confidence that you're not gonna go wild off your screwdriver. And there it is. Awesome. So we got our rotor on. We can now get our case back on. Check it for dust again. Pull it up into the light. Another quick blow. And it's looking pretty good. I'll just start threading it with my fingers. we go. Just threading on there. Looking good. So at this point you would use your JAXA wrench or a casing ball, whichever you have. I'm going to use my trusty casing ball. Just get it on until you feel a lot of resistance, and I do. We have a completed watch. Look at that. Love it. Oh, that is awesome. Wipe it off. It got some dust on the case. Silicone grease when I touched it. So we almost have a watch. All we got to do is put a band on, and that'll be the topic of the next video. And this has been fun. Let's get the band on.